The store manager slid the ring across the glass, and my stomach dropped before my mind could catch up. Why was my engagement ring sitting in a resale case? Why did the receipt have my name on it? And why was Daniel looking at me like I'd just broken something we couldn't fix? I never sold this, I said, but my voice sounded thinner than I felt. Mr. Whitman tapped the paper. Arya Alvarez, signature matches, and the seller said she was your sister. My chest tightened. Isabella had just told me she'd never even touched it. Something wasn't just missing. It had been taken, and someone had used my name to do it. If you're watching this, tell me where you're from and what time it is where you are right now. And if you've ever had someone close to you deny something you knew was true, I'd really want to hear your story. Subscribe if you want to follow what happened next, because I didn't walk away from this quietly. 2 weeks earlier, everything still felt intact. Not perfect, but steady in a way I had learned to appreciate. It was a Sunday afternoon, the kind where sunlight lingers a little longer through the windows, softening everything it touches. I was standing in my kitchen rinsing out a mug when I heard Isabella's voice from the living room. Okay, but seriously, Arya, how much is it actually worth? I smiled to myself before walking in. She was sitting cross-legged on my couch, holding out her hand, admiring the ring like it belonged in a display case instead of on my finger. Not everything has to be about money, I said, lightly drying my hands. She looked up at me, eyebrows raised. Everything has a number. I'm just curious. I hesitated for a second. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I knew how she was when it came to money. Numbers weren't just numbers to Isabella. They were leverage, possibility, escape. About 12.5, I said finally, give or take. Her eyes widened just a little. Not dramatically, but enough that I noticed. 12,000, she repeated like she needed to hear it twice to believe it. I nodded. Daniel saved for a long time. She leaned back against the couch, still staring at the ring. Must be nice. The way she said it wasn't openly bitter, but it wasn't neutral either. I sat down across from her. You okay? Yeah, she said quickly, then laughed. I mean, no, but when am I ever? That was more honest. I already knew bits and pieces. A few missed payments. A job that didn't pay enough. Some vague mention of consolidating debt. But Isabella had always been selective with details. She'd tell you just enough to get sympathy, never enough to invite real accountability. Before I could ask anything else, my phone buzzed. It was Mom. I put her on speaker without thinking. Hey, Mom. Arya mija, she said, her voice warm in that practiced way she had. Is your sister there? Isabella leaned closer. I'm here, good Mom said. I wanted to talk to both of you. Something in her tone made me straighten up. What's going on? I asked. There was a small pause, just long enough to feel intentional. You know family comes first, she began, no matter what. I exchanged a quick glance with Isabella. She looked down suddenly, very interested in the ring again. I do, I said carefully. Your sister's going through a temporary situation, Mom continued. Nothing she can't recover from, but she needs support. Real support. I didn't respond right away. I had learned over time that the word support meant very different things depending on who was asking. How much I asked. Isabella let out a small breath like she'd been holding it. It's not that simple, she said quickly. It usually is, I replied, keeping my voice calm. Another pause. Then Mom spoke again. About 20,000. The number landed between us heavier than it sounded. I leaned back slowly. What kind of debt? Credit cards. Some personal loans, Isabella said, avoiding my eyes. It just built up. How? She shrugged, still not looking at me. Life. I let the silence stretch for a moment. Not to punish her, but to see if she would fill it with something more real. She didn't. Mom stepped in again. She's trying to fix it, but she needs time and understanding. And money, I said quietly. Mom didn't deny it. I'm not asking you to solve everything, she said. Just help where you can. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something more familiar. Expectation. I had been the stable one for as long as I could remember. The one who planned, who saved, who didn't make impulsive decisions. And because of that, I was also the one people assumed could absorb the consequences when others didn't. I can't just write a check, Mom, I said. I have my own commitments. I know, she said quickly. And we're not asking you to. Just be there for your sister. The phrase sounded harmless, but it never really was. I glanced at Isabella. She finally looked up at me, her expression softer now. I'm not asking you for anything, she said. I'll figure it out. I believed that she believed that. That didn't mean it was true. We moved on from the conversation after that. At least on the surface. We talked about the wedding, about venues, about small details that felt easier to hold on to. But something had shifted. I could feel it in the way Isabella kept glancing at my hand. Not admiring anymore. Measuring. Later that afternoon, she stood up and walked over to the mirror near the hallway. Can I try it on? She asked, holding her hand out again. I blinked. You already did. I mean, with this dress, she said, tugging lightly at the fabric she was wearing. Just for a picture. I want to see how it looks in different lighting. It was such a small request. Normal, even. I stood there for a second longer than I needed to. Not because I thought she would take it, but because something in me hesitated anyway. Maybe it was the conversation. Maybe it was the number. Maybe it was the way she'd said must be nice. You're acting like I'm going to steal it, she said, half joking. I let out a breath and slipped the ring off my finger. Just don't drop it, I said, handing it to her. She smiled. Relax, I've got it. She slid it onto her finger and turned toward the mirror, tilting her hand slightly, catching the light. For a moment, she looked happy. Genuinely. She lifted her phone and snapped a quick photo. Then another. Okay, that actually looks amazing, she said, laughing softly. I watched her for a second longer. Then I turned back toward the kitchen. I didn't think that small moment would matter. I didn't think handing her that ring would be the beginning of something I couldn't take back. 3 days later, I noticed the silence before I noticed the absence. It was early evening. I had just gotten home from work, dropped my bag by the door, and kicked off my heels in that automatic way you do when your body is tired, but your mind hasn't caught up yet. Daniel was running late, so the apartment felt unusually still. I walked into the bedroom to change, passing the dresser without really looking at it. Then something pulled me back. It wasn't obvious at first. Not a dramatic realization, just a slight misalignment in the way things were. The small velvet ring box was there exactly where I always left it, closed, undisturbed. I reached for it anyway. When I opened it, my stomach dropped. Empty. For a second, I just stared at it like my brain needed time to process what my eyes were seeing. I turned the box slightly as if the ring might somehow be hiding in a corner that didn't exist. It wasn't. I set the box down slowly and checked the dresser surface. Then the nightstand. Then the bathroom counter. Nothing. A strange, quiet tension started building in my chest. Not panic yet, but something close to it. Okay, I said out loud like I could reason my way through it. Think. I retraced my steps. The last time I had worn it was 2 days ago before bed. I remembered taking it off, placing it in the box, closing the lid. I remembered that clearly. I checked my purse, my coat pockets, even the kitchen sink just in case I had taken it off while washing dishes. Nothing. By the time I circled back to the bedroom, that quiet tension had sharpened into something colder. There was no sign of forced entry, no broken lock, no disturbed drawers. No one had been here except me. And Isabella. I picked up my phone and called her before I could talk myself out of it. She answered on the third ring. Hey, she said, her voice light. What's up? I didn't ease into it. Did you take my ring? There was a pause. Not long. Maybe half a second. But long enough. What she said a little too quickly. No. Why would I take your ring? Because it's missing, I said, keeping my voice steady. And you were the last person who had it. I gave it back to you, she said immediately. You literally watched me. I watched you try it on, I corrected. I didn't watch you put it back. Another pause. This one slightly longer. Arya, she said, her tone shifting hurt defensive. Are you serious right now? I'm asking a question. And I'm answering it, she snapped. I didn't take it. I closed my eyes for a second, pressing my fingers against my temple. Then where is it? I asked quietly. How am I supposed to know she shot back? It's your apartment. That's exactly my point. Her exhale came through the phone sharp and frustrated. You're implying something you shouldn't be implying, she said. I came over, I tried it on, I gave it back. End of story. That's not what I remember I said. Oh, so now I'm lying. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Her voice rose just enough to make me pull the phone slightly away from my ear. You always do this, she continued. The second something goes wrong, you look at me like I'm the problem. That's not fair, I said, my own voice tightening. I'm looking at the facts. What facts? She snapped. That you lost your own ring. The word lost landed harder than it should have. I don't lose things like that, I said. Well, clearly you just did. Silence settled between us for a moment. Not calm, just heavy. I'm going to keep looking, I said finally. If I find it, I'll let you know. Yeah, she said, her tone cold now. Please do. I ended the call and stood there, phone still in my hand. Something about the conversation didn't sit right. It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. The speed of her denial, the way she flipped it back on me so quickly, like she had already rehearsed the angle. I shook the thought off, trying to stay grounded. Accusations without proof would only make things worse. When Daniel got home, I was still searching. He walked into the bedroom, loosening his tie, then stopped when he saw the look on my face. What happened? I held up the empty ring box. It's gone. His expression shifted instantly. What do you mean gone? I mean, it's not here, I said. I've checked everywhere. He stepped closer, taking the box from my hand like he might find something I missed. Okay, he said slowly. Let's think. When did you last have it? 2 nights ago, I said. Before bed. And since then, no one's been here except me. I hesitated. And Isabella. He looked up at me. Did you ask her? I just did. And she says she gave it back. He didn't respond right away. He just studied my face like he was trying to read something underneath my words. Do you believe her? He asked finally. I opened my mouth to answer, then stopped, because I didn't know. I don't know, I said quietly. That felt worse than anything else. Daniel nodded slowly, setting the box back down. Okay, he said. Then we treat this like what it is. What is it? I asked. A missing item worth over $12,000, he said. That's not something we just ignore. I'm not ignoring it, I said. I know, he replied, but if we can't find it, we need to report it. The word report immediately tightened something in my chest. Let's not jump to that yet, I said. I want to be sure. Arya, he said. Gently being sure doesn't mean waiting until it's too late. I looked down at the empty box again. I just need a little more time, I said. He studied me for a second, then nodded. Okay, he said, but not too much time. That night, after he went to shower, I sat on the edge of the bed replaying everything in my head. Every detail, every movement, every word. And no matter how many times I ran through it, the same point kept resurfacing. Isabella had the ring, and now it was gone. I reached for my phone again, opening my messages. There was a new notification, an email, from a sender I didn't recognize. Subject line, transaction confirmation. I frowned and tapped it open. As I scanned the first few lines, the room seemed to tilt slightly. It mentioned a diamond ring, a resale, and a date that did not make sense. My grip tightened around the phone, because whatever this was, it wasn't just about something being lost anymore. The email didn't look like spam. That was the first thing I noticed. No strange formatting, no urgent broken English, just a clean header, a company name I vaguely recognized, and a confirmation number that felt official. I read it again, slower this time. Transaction confirmed, item diamond engagement ring, condition excellent. Seller Arya Alvarez. My name sat there like it belonged. My chest tightened. Below that, there was a timestamp. 2 days ago, late morning. I wasn't anywhere near a jewelry store that morning. I had been at my desk in a budget review meeting that ran over by 40 minutes. I could picture it clearly. My laptop screen, the spreadsheet, Lena whispering sarcastic comments under her breath. I hadn't left the building. So how was my name on a resale transaction? I scrolled further. There was a store location, about 20 minutes from my apartment, and a confirmation number. I stood up so quickly the chair scraped against the floor. Daniel walked out of the bathroom, towel around his shoulders. Everything okay? I turned the phone toward him. No. He took it reading silently. By the time he finished, his expression had shifted from concern to something sharper. This isn't random, he said. I know. You didn't do this. That's not even a question. He nodded once, then looked back at the screen. Then someone used your identity. The word identity landed heavier than I expected. Not just the ring, not just the money. Someone had stepped into my name and acted like they belonged there. I crossed my arms, trying to steady myself. There's a confirmation number. And a location. Daniel handed the phone back. Then we go there. Tomorrow, I said immediately. I want to see everything in person. He studied me for a second. Are you sure you want to wait? I need to be clear when I walk in, I said. Not emotional. That was only half true. The other half was that I needed time to think, because one question kept circling in my head, refusing to settle. If Isabella didn't take the ring, then how did someone get a copy of my ID? That night, I barely slept. Not because I was searching anymore. I had already checked every possible place twice, but because my brain wouldn't stop connecting details. The ring, the timing, the way Isabella had reacted, the way she had avoided specifics about her debt, and something else, something smaller but sharper, a memory I hadn't paid attention to at the time. The day she came over, she had asked to charge her phone. I had handed her a charger from my desk drawer, the same drawer where I kept copies of my documents, bank statements, insurance papers, and my old driver's license. I sat up in bed, the realization hitting me all at once. A copy. She wouldn't have needed the original, just something she could scan. I reached for my phone and opened my notes app, typing quickly before the thought slipped away. Isabella had access to desk drawer ID copies stored there. Timing matches, visit transaction next day. Daniel shifted beside me. You're not sleeping, are you? No, I said quietly. What are you thinking? I hesitated. I think this wasn't impulsive. He propped himself up on one elbow. What do you mean? I took a breath. This feels planned. He didn't interrupt. She didn't just take the ring, I continued. She used my name, my ID. That takes steps, time. Daniel nodded slowly. So you think she knew what she was doing? I think she had a reason, I said. And that reason is $20,000 of debt, he said. The number hung in the air between us. For the first time, it didn't feel abstract. It felt like motive. The next morning, I got to the office earlier than usual. Lena was already there, scrolling through something on her screen with a cup of coffee in hand. You look like you didn't sleep, she said without looking up. I didn't, I replied. That got her attention. She turned toward me. Okay? What happened? I walked over and set my phone on her desk, opening the email. Tell me what you see. She leaned in, scanning quickly. Transaction confirmation. Resale. Diamond ring. She looked up at me. Wait, this is your ring, isn't it? Yes. And you didn't do this? No. She sat back, processing. Okay, she said slowly. So someone sold it under your name? Yes. And you have the store location? Yes. And a confirmation number? Yes. She stared at me for a second longer. Then why are you here instead of already at the store? Because I need more than just a confrontation, I said. I need proof. Lena's expression shifted recognition. Got it, she said. You want something they can't argue with. Exactly. She turned back to her computer, fingers already moving. Most legitimate jewelry resale places log transactions through a centralized system, she said, especially for items over 10 grand. Anti-fraud insurance, all that. Meaning there's a record somewhere beyond just that email, she said. Payment method. Timestamp. Maybe even device data if it was digital. I felt something click into place. Can we access it? Not directly, she said. But we can narrow it down. If we match the store and the time, we can figure out what kind of system they use. Then you ask the right questions when you go in. I nodded, leaning slightly closer to her screen. For the next 30 minutes, we worked through it together, filtering store databases, cross-referencing resale platforms, matching transaction structures. By the end of it, Lena leaned back in her chair. Okay, she said. Here's what you ask for. She pointed at the screen as she listed them. Original intake form, payment breakdown, and, if it was processed digitally, any associated device or wallet info. Would they actually give me that? I asked. If your name is on the transaction, she said. They'd be stupid not to. I exhaled slowly. This was no longer just a missing item. It was a paper trail. And paper trails didn't lie. Lena glanced at me. You have someone in mind, don't you? I didn't answer right away, because saying it out loud would make it real in a way I wasn't fully ready for. I have a theory, I said finally. She nodded. Then don't confront yet. Confirm. That word stayed with me. Confirm. Not accuse. Not assume. Confirm. I grabbed my bag, slipping my phone inside. I'm going to the store after work, I said. Good, Lena replied. And Arya. I paused, looking back at her. If it is who you think it is, she said carefully. Make sure you're ready for what that means. I held her gaze for a second. I think I already am. But as I walked out of the office, I realized something uncomfortable. I wasn't just preparing to prove what happened. I was preparing to accept it. And those were two very different things. The bell above the jewelry store door gave a soft chime as Daniel and I stepped inside. It felt different this time. Less like confusion, more like confrontation waiting to happen. Mr. Whitman recognized me immediately. His posture straightened like he had already decided this conversation mattered. You came back, he said. I need to see everything, I replied, keeping my voice calm. The full transaction. He studied my face for a moment, then nodded. Follow me. We moved to a smaller office in the back. He closed the door behind us, then pulled up a file on his computer. This is the intake record, he said, turning the screen slightly toward me. I stepped closer. There it was again. My name, Arya Alvarez. Below it, a scanned copy of my driver's license. I leaned in, focusing on the details. The image wasn't taken from a physical card. It was too clean, too flat. A scan, I said quietly. Mr. Whitman nodded. That's what it looks like. Daniel crossed his arms beside me. So whoever came in didn't present the actual ID. Not that I recall Mr. Whitman said. They provided a digital copy. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not panic this time, but clarity sharpening into something colder. Show me the signature, I said. He clicked to the next page. A digital signature appeared at the bottom of the form. At first glance, it looked like mine, but when I looked closer, I saw it. The angle of the A. The spacing between the letters. Close enough to pass. Not close enough to be real. That's not my handwriting, I said. Mr. Whitman didn't argue. Understood. He clicked again. This is the payment breakdown. I leaned forward. Total resale value $9,200, he read. Paid in 2 parts. Cash portion and electronic transfer. Electronic, how Daniel asked. Mr. Whitman scrolled. Debit transaction, he said. Card ending in 4821. I didn't recognize the number. But then he clicked one more time. A name appeared next to the transaction. Isabella Alvarez. The room went very still. Daniel let out a slow breath beside me. That's not a coincidence. No, it wasn't. I didn't feel shocked. Not anymore. Just confirmed. Can you show me the timestamp I asked? Mr. Whitman nodded and pulled it up. 10:42 a.m. 2 days after she had stood in my living room laughing with my ring on her finger. I pressed my lips together, forcing myself to stay focused. Was there anything else I asked? Any other identifying information? He hesitated for a fraction of a second. Then he clicked into another tab. There was a digital wallet involved in the deposit, he said. Apple Pay. My pulse picked up slightly. Is there an account attached to it? There's an email, he said. That's all we log. He turned the screen. I read it once. Then again. Isabella.abrooksgmail.com. Mail to Isabella, abrooksgmail.com. She hadn't even tried to hide it. A strange quiet anger settled into my chest. Not explosive, not loud, just steady, like something finally locking into place. Daniel looked at me. Arya. I see it, I said. Mr. Whitman cleared his throat gently. There's one more thing. I turned back to him. We do have security footage, he said, but the individual was wearing a mask and sunglasses. It's not definitive. Show me anyway, I said. He pulled up the clip. The video quality was clear enough to follow movement, not identity. A woman walked up to the counter. Slim build, dark hair pulled back, confident posture, not rushed, not nervous, comfortable, too comfortable. She placed the ring down like she had every right to be there. I watched the way she moved, the way she tilted her head slightly when the manager spoke, the way her hand rested on the counter. Familiar, painfully familiar. Daniel exhaled quietly beside me. That's her. I didn't answer, because I didn't need to. I already knew. I stepped back from the screen, my thoughts moving faster now, but clearer than they had been since this started. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. She had taken the ring, used my ID, signed my name, sold it, and used her own account to take the money. Not impulsive, not desperate in the moment. Planned. Can I get copies of all of this, I asked. Mr. Whitman nodded immediately. Of course. Given that your name is on the transaction, you're entitled to it. Everything I said. The intake form, the payment record, the timestamp, the email reference. I'll compile it for you, he said. While he worked, Daniel turned to me. What are you going to do? He asked quietly. I didn't answer right away, because for the first time, the question wasn't about what happened. It was about what I was willing to do about it. I'm not going to argue with her, I said finally. Daniel raised an eyebrow slightly. No, I shook my head. I'm going to show her, I said. He studied me for a second, then nodded. Okay, he said. And if she still denies it? I looked back at the screen at the frozen frame of the woman behind the mask, then at the documents printing quietly beside the desk. She won't, I said. But even as I said it, I knew something else. Denial wasn't the real problem anymore. The truth was, and once it was out, there would be no way to put this back where it was. Mr. Whitman handed me a folder a few minutes later. All the records are in here, he said. I took it, feeling the weight of it in my hands. Paper, ink, proof. The kind that didn't depend on memory or emotion. The kind that didn't change when someone raised their voice or cried or shifted the story. The kind that ended arguments. As Daniel and I walked back toward the door, I felt something settle inside me. Not relief, not yet, but direction. Because now I wasn't guessing anymore. I wasn't asking questions that could be twisted or avoided. I had the answer, and the next time I saw Isabella, I wasn't going to ask her what happened. I was going to show her what she did. My mother's house always smelled the same cinnamon coffee and something warm that tried too hard to feel like home. That night, it felt different, tighter, like the air already knew what I had come to say. Isabella was sitting at the kitchen table when I walked in, scrolling through her phone like nothing in the world had shifted. My mother stood at the counter, drying a dish, her back turned, but not really. She was listening. Hey, Isabella said casually, not even looking up. You didn't call back. I didn't need to, I replied. That got her attention. She lifted her head slowly, her eyes meeting mine. What does that mean? I set the folder down on the table between us. It made a soft final sound. That means I went to the store, I said. My mother turned around. What store, she asked, already cautious. The one where my engagement ring was sold, I said. Isabella let out a short laugh, shaking her head. Arya, we already talked about this. I didn't. Don't I cut in? My voice wasn't loud, but it was enough. Enough to stop her mid-sentence. Enough to shift the room. I opened the folder and pulled out the first document, sliding it across the table toward her. Look at it, I said. She didn't move at first. Then slowly she reached out and picked up the paper. I watched her eyes scan the page. The intake form. My name. My ID. Her jaw tightened just slightly, but her expression held. "That's not me," she said, setting it down. "Anyone could have." I slid the next page forward. The payment breakdown, the debit transaction, her name. This time she didn't pick it up right away. Her fingers hovered above it for a second too long. "That's your card," I said, ending in 4821. My mother stepped closer. "What is this?" "Proof," I said simply. Isabella exhaled sharply. "You're twisting things. That doesn't mean I sold anything. Someone could have used my card." "Stop!" Again, not loud, but final. I pulled out the third document. "Apple Pay transaction," I said. "Link to your email." I turned it so she could read it clearly. She didn't. She didn't have to, because I watched the moment her eyes flicked to the corner of the page and stopped. Just for a second. Then she looked away. "I don't know what that is," she said, quieter now. My mother looked between us, her expression tightening. "Isabella." "It's not what she's making it sound like," Isabella said quickly. "She's always been like this. She builds a whole case out of nothing. I'm not building anything, I said. I'm showing you what already exists." Silence fell over the room. Heavy. Unavoidable. I reached into the folder one more time. "This is the timestamp," I said. 10:42 in the morning. 2 days after you were at my apartment. Isabella's lips pressed together. "And this," I continued, pulling out the final sheet, "is the email attached to the digital wallet." I didn't slide it. I held it up. So she had to look at me to avoid looking at it. "Do you want me to read it out loud?" I asked. She didn't answer. My mother stepped closer, her voice sharper now. "Isabella, answer your sister." "I don't have to answer anything," Isabella snapped, standing up abruptly. "This is insane. She's accusing me of something serious without what I asked, finally letting a trace of something sharper into my voice. Without evidence. That landed, because that's exactly what this was. Not suspicion, not emotion. Evidence. "You used my ID," I said. "You signed my name. You sold my ring. And you took the money." Each sentence was measured, controlled, irrefutable. For a moment, I thought she might keep denying it. "Push harder. Cry louder. Turn it into something else." That's what she had always done. But this time, there was nowhere for the story to go. Her shoulders dropped just slightly. "Not dramatically. Just enough. I didn't think you'd notice this fast," she said. The words slipped out before she could stop them. The room went completely still. My mother's face changed first. Shock. Then something deeper. "Isabella," she whispered. But Isabella didn't look at her. She was looking at me now. Really looking. And for the first time since this started, she wasn't pretending. "I was going to fix it," she said quickly. "I just needed time." I didn't respond, because I wanted her to keep talking. To say it fully, "I was going to pay it back," she continued. "I swear. I needed to clear some things first. Once I got ahead, I would have—" "You sold my engagement ring," I said. Her voice faltered. It was mine," I cut in, "and you used my name to do it." My mother stepped in, her voice shaking. "Why would you do that?" Isabella turned toward her, frustration flashing. "Because I didn't have a choice." "You always have a choice," I said. "No, you don't," she shot back. "Not when you're drowning." The word echoed. Drowning. For a second, I saw it. The panic. The pressure. The fear she had been hiding behind, sarcasm and deflection. But it didn't change what she had done. "You had options," I said. "You just didn't like them." "That's easy for you to say," she snapped. "You've never had to." "Don't," I said quietly. Because that argument, that comparison, was exactly how this kind of thing kept happening. "You don't get to justify this by rewriting my life," I continued. "You made a decision. You crossed a line." She looked away. And that was it. No more denial. No more performance. Just the truth sitting between us. Raw and uncomfortable. I gathered the papers, slowly placing them back into the folder. "What happens now?" my mother asked, her voice barely steady. I closed the folder, then looked at Isabella. "You have 2 options," I said. She didn't move. "Either you pay back every dollar," I continued, "and sign a formal agreement acknowledging what you did." I paused just long enough for the second option to land harder. "Or I take this to the police." The words didn't echo. They didn't need to, because the moment they left my mouth, everything changed. The silence after I said it wasn't dramatic. It was heavier than that. It settled into the room like something permanent. Isabella didn't react right away. She just stood there staring at the folder in my hands like it had rewritten the rules she was used to playing by. "You'd really call the police on me?" she asked, finally her voice quieter now. It wasn't defiant. It wasn't even angry. It sounded uncertain. I met her eyes. "You used my identity to sell a $12,000 ring. I said I'd pay you back." "That's not the same thing," I replied. She let out a shaky breath, running her hand through her hair. "I didn't think it would get this far." "That's the problem," I said. "You didn't think about any of it past what you needed in that moment." My mother stepped forward, her voice tight with emotion. "Arya, maybe we can handle this without making it legal." I turned to her. "It is already legal," I said calmly. "I just haven't acted on it yet." That landed differently, because this wasn't about creating consequences. It was about acknowledging the ones that already existed. Isabella looked between us, something shifting in her expression again, faster this time, calculating. "If I sign something," she said slowly, "that means you can still use it against me later." I nodded once. "If you break the agreement, yes. And if I don't, then it stays between us." She crossed her arms, thinking. For the first time since I walked in, she wasn't trying to redirect or deny. She was negotiating. "How much?" she asked. My mother flinched slightly at the word. But I didn't. "Full amount," I said. "What you received from the sale, plus any fees tied to the transaction." Her jaw tightened. "I don't have that right now." "I know," I said. "That's why it would be structured." She frowned. "Structured how?" "A repayment agreement," I said, "with a timeline. Fixed monthly payments. Miss one, it escalates." "Escalates to what?" "To the police," I said, holding her gaze. She swallowed. I could see the shift again. Not panic this time. Reality. "And if I refuse?" she asked. I didn't hesitate. "Then I file a report tomorrow." My mother let out a small, strained sound. "Arya." I turned to her again, softer this time, but not backing down. "This isn't about punishing her," I said. "It's about protecting myself. She's your sister, and I'm still the one she chose to do this to." That quieted her, because there wasn't a response to that. Isabella leaned back against the table, exhaling slowly. "I didn't think you'd go this far," she said again. "I didn't think you would either," I replied. Another silence. Then she nodded once. "Okay," she said. "Fine." My mother looked at her. "What do you mean, fine?" "I'll sign it," Isabella said. "Whatever agreement she wants." The words came out flat. Not apologetic, not emotional, just practical. I watched her carefully. "Say it clearly," I said. Her eyes snapped back to mine. "What?" "Say what you're agreeing to," I said. Out loud. For a second, I thought she might refuse. Then her shoulders dropped slightly. "I sold your ring," she said, "using your ID." The room held that sentence for a moment. "I'll pay it back." She continued, her voice quieter now. "All of it." I nodded once. Okay. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't relief. It was confirmation. I pulled my phone out and opened my notes. "I'll have a lawyer draft the agreement," I said. "You'll review it, sign it, and we'll both keep copies." "How long do I have?" she asked. "To sign," I said. 48 hours. "And to pay?" "That depends on what your finances actually look like," I said. "But the terms won't be flexible once they're set." She let out a breath through her nose. "Of course they won't." My mother stepped closer to her, placing a hand on her arm. "We'll figure this out," she said softly. I didn't respond to that, because we wasn't part of this anymore. This wasn't a family discussion. It was a legal boundary. Isabella glanced at me again. "You're serious about this?" "Yes. No exceptions. No." She held my gaze for a second longer, then nodded again. "Okay, that was it. No apology. No explanation. Just acceptance." And strangely, that felt more honest than anything else she had said. I gathered the folders, sliding the papers back into place. "I'll send you the draft," I said. As I turned toward the door, my mother's voice stopped me. "Arya." I paused, but didn't turn around. "You're really going to let this come between you?" she asked. I closed my eyes briefly, then faced her. "This didn't come between us," I said quietly. It revealed what was already there. She didn't answer, because she couldn't. I stepped outside into the evening air, the door closing softly behind me. Daniel was leaning against the car waiting. "Well," he asked. "It's done," I said. He studied my face. "You don't look relieved." "I'm not," I replied. He nodded slowly. "What do you feel?" I thought about it for a second. "Clear," I said finally. And that was the truth. Because for the first time since the ring disappeared, there were no more questions, only decisions, and I had just made mine. The lawyer's office didn't feel intimidating the way I expected it to. It felt quiet, orderly, like everything inside it had already been decided long before anyone walked in. Mr. Grant greeted us with a firm handshake and a measured smile. He didn't waste time with small talk, which I appreciated. "Have a seat," he said, gesturing to the chairs across from his desk. "I reviewed the documents you sent." I sat down, placing the folder neatly in front of me. Isabella took the seat beside me, her posture stiff, her expression unreadable. Mr. Grant opened a printed draft. "This is a civil repayment agreement," he said. "It outlines acknowledgement of the act, the total amount owed, and the repayment schedule. It also includes a breach clause." Isabella shifted slightly. "Breach clause meaning?" "If you fail to make payments as agreed," he said calmly, "the matter can be escalated into a formal legal complaint, including fraud and identity misuse." The words landed with more weight coming from him than they had from me. She nodded slowly. "Okay." He continued. "Total amount owed $9,200 from the resale plus $800 in associated fees. That brings us to $10,000 even." I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. I could feel the number settle in. "Repayment term 12 months, he added. "Fixed monthly installments. No deferments." Isabella let out a quiet breath. "That's tight." "It's structured," I said. She glanced at me, something flickering across her face. Maybe frustration, maybe something else. Mr. Grant slid the document toward her. "Take your time," he said. "Read carefully." The room fell silent, except for the soft sound of paper moving. I watched her eyes track the lines. Every clause, every condition, every sentence that turned what she had done into something official, something recorded, something that wouldn't disappear just because we stopped talking about it. She reached the acknowledgement section and paused. Her fingers rested lightly on the page. Then she looked up at me. "Once I sign this, that's it?" she asked. "That depends on you," I said. She frowned slightly. "What does that mean?" "It means, if you follow through, this stays here," I said, nodding toward the document. "If you don't, it moves somewhere else." Her jaw tightened. "Right," she said. She looked back down at the page. For a moment, I thought she might argue again, push back, try to renegotiate something. But she didn't. She picked up the pen and signed. Slowly, deliberately. Her name pressed into the paper in a way that felt very different from the digital version I had seen in the store's system. This one was real. Mr. Grant took the document back, reviewed it, then handed me a copy. "Both parties are now bound," he said. "Keep your records." I nodded. "Thank you." Isabella leaned back in her chair, exhaling like she had just stepped out of something she couldn't quite name. "Okay," she said quietly. "It's done." I looked at her. "No," I said. "It started." She didn't respond, because she understood the difference. Outside the office, the air felt sharper, cooler. Daniel was waiting by the entrance, and he straightened when he saw us walk out. "Well," he asked. "She signed," I said. He nodded once, his gaze flicking briefly to Isabella before returning to me. "Good." Isabella crossed her arms, looking away. "Yeah, good." There was nothing left to say in that moment. No apology came, no explanation, just a quiet, uneasy understanding that something fundamental had changed. "I'll send the first payment next week," she said, after a moment, still not looking at me. "I'll confirm when I receive it," I replied. She gave a short nod. Then, without another word, she turned and walked toward the parking lot. I watched her go. Not with anger, not even with sadness exactly. Just distance. Daniel stepped closer to me. You okay? I thought about it. The past week had been a blur of questions, doubt, tension, and decisions that felt heavier than they should have been. But standing there now, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I didn't feel uncertain. I'm steady, I said. He smiled faintly. That's a good place to be. I nodded. Because it was. For the first time since I opened that empty ring box, I wasn't reacting anymore. I wasn't chasing answers or trying to hold things together out of habit. I had drawn a line, and more importantly, I had kept it. As we walked back to the car, my phone buzzed. I glanced down. A message from my mother. You didn't have to make it this formal. I stared at the screen for a second, then typed back. I did. I didn't add anything else, because there was nothing else to explain. The formality wasn't the problem. The problem was that without it, nothing would have changed. And I wasn't willing to go back to that. The first payment came exactly when Isabella said it would. 7 days later, 8:12 a.m., direct transfer, $833.33. I stared at the number on my screen longer than I expected to, not because it was surprising, but because it was real. It wasn't a promise. It wasn't a conversation. It wasn't a plan we were still negotiating. It was action. I forwarded the confirmation to Mr. Grant just like he instructed, then saved a copy in a folder I had already labeled in my email. Isabella. Agreement. Everything had its place now. Every document, every payment, every detail. Not because I was trying to build a case anymore, but because I wasn't willing to lose control of the facts again. Daniel noticed the shift before I said anything. She paid, he asked, setting his coffee down as I walked into the kitchen. I nodded. On time. That matters, he said. It does, I replied. But it didn't fix anything. That was the part people didn't always understand. Accountability and repair aren't the same thing. One is measurable. The other isn't. Over the next few weeks, the pattern held. Payment, confirmation, silence. Isabella didn't call, didn't text, didn't try to explain or revisit what happened. At first, I thought she might be waiting for me to reach out. Then I realized she was doing exactly what the agreement required. Nothing more, nothing less. And in a strange way that felt consistent with who she had always been. Effort, but only when it was clearly defined. Responsibility, but only when it was unavoidable. About a month in, my mother called. Not to ask how I was doing. Not to check in on the situation, but to say something that sounded familiar. You're still not talking to your sister. I leaned back against the couch, letting the question settle. I'm not avoiding her, I said. There's just nothing to discuss. She's doing what you asked, my mother replied. She's making the payments. I know. Then why does it feel like you're still punishing her? I closed my eyes for a moment. Because that word, punishing, was exactly how this kind of situation got reframed. It's not punishment, I said quietly. It's distance. There was a pause on the other end. That's still your sister, she said. And I'm still the person she chose to do this to, I replied. My voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Because I wasn't trying to convince her. I was stating something she didn't want to accept. She was under pressure, my mother said softly. People make mistakes when they're desperate. That wasn't a mistake, I said. It was a series of decisions. Another pause. Longer this time. I just don't want this to turn into something permanent, she said. I opened my eyes, looking out the window. The light was different now than it had been a few weeks ago. Clearer, brighter. This already is something permanent, I said. I just get to decide what part of it stays in my life. She didn't answer, because there wasn't an easy response to that. We ended the call shortly after. No argument, no resolution, just a quiet acknowledgement that we weren't standing in the same place anymore. That weekend, Daniel and I met with our wedding planner. Final details, guest list confirmations, seating arrangements. It should have felt stressful. Instead, it felt simple, focused, until we reached one specific line on the list. Family seating. Do you want to reserve a spot for your sister? The planner asked gently. The question hung there for a second. Not heavy, not dramatic, just present. I looked down at the list. Her name wasn't there, and I realized I hadn't hesitated when I left it off. "No," I said. The planner nodded without judgment, making a small note. Daniel glanced at me, not questioning, just checking. I met his eyes briefly and gave a small nod. I was sure. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because I understood something now that I hadn't fully accepted before. Access is a privilege, not a default. And just because someone is family doesn't mean they automatically get it back after breaking it. A few days later, the second payment came through. Same amount. Same time window. Same silence. I confirmed it, filed it, moved on. But that night, as I sat at the kitchen table looking at the growing record of transactions, something shifted again. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a way anyone else would notice. Just internally. A realization. She was following the agreement. She was doing what she had to do. But she hadn't once said, "I'm sorry." And for the first time, I understood why that mattered. Not because I needed the words, but because without them, everything she was doing felt like compliance, not accountability. I closed the laptop slowly, because that was something no contract could require, and no document could enforce. It had to come from her, or not at all. And either way, it didn't change what I needed to do next. The morning of the wedding was quieter than I expected. No chaos, no last-minute panic, just a slow, steady rhythm that felt grounded. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the edge of my dress, not because anything was wrong, but because I needed something to do with my hands. Daniel knocked lightly before stepping in. "You ready?" he asked. I looked at him through the reflection. "Yeah," I said, and this time I meant it. Not just for the ceremony, for everything that came with it. The venue was small, intentional. Close friends, a few relatives, people who had shown up consistently, not just when it was convenient. My mother was there. She hugged me when I arrived, holding on a second longer than usual. "You look beautiful," she said. "Thank you," I replied. We didn't talk about Isabella. We didn't need to, because her absence was already part of the room. Not loud, not disruptive, just defined. The ceremony itself was simple. No grand speeches, no elaborate traditions. Just words that felt real. Promises that didn't try to sound perfect. When Daniel slid the ring onto my finger, it felt different from the first time I imagined this moment. Not because something was missing, but because something had changed. This ring wasn't about what had been taken. It was about what had been rebuilt. Afterward, during the reception, I found a quiet moment alone near the edge of the space. The music was soft in the background. People were laughing somewhere behind me. And for the first time in weeks, my mind wasn't racing ahead or looping backward. It was still. My phone buzzed in my hand. I glanced down. A notification. Another payment. Right on schedule. $833.33. I stared at it for a second, then locked the screen. Not because it didn't matter, but because it didn't define this moment. Daniel stepped up beside me, handing me a glass of champagne. "Everything okay?" he asked. I smiled faintly. "Yeah." He studied my face for a second. "You sure?" I nodded. "I am." And I was. Because the truth was, the situation with Isabella wasn't unresolved anymore. It just wasn't repaired. And I had finally accepted the difference. Later that evening, my mother found me again. She asked about today, she said quietly. I didn't have to ask who. "What did you tell her?" I replied. "That you were happy," she said. I nodded once. "That's enough." She wanted to call, my mother added, and I told her it wasn't the right time. I met her eyes. "Thank you." She hesitated, then spoke again. "I still hope one day things can be different." I considered that for a moment, not dismissing it, but not holding on to it either. Maybe I said, "But different doesn't mean the same." She didn't respond because she understood, at least a little. As the night wound down, I took one last look around the room, at the people who were there, at the space that felt safe, at the life I had chosen to build carefully, intentionally, without ignoring what it cost to protect it. I thought about the ring I lost, the one that had started all of this, and I realized something I hadn't fully put into words before. It wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a test of boundaries, of truth, of what I was willing to tolerate in the name of family. And I had answered it. Not perfectly, not without pain, but clearly. I slipped my hand into Daniel's as we walked out together. The new ring caught the light for just a second. Not brighter, not more valuable, just mine. And this time, no one else had access to it. There's a difference between holding on to someone and holding on to your own boundaries. For a long time, I thought those two things had to exist together, that if you loved your family, you had to make room for their mistakes, even when those mistakes crossed lines that shouldn't have been crossed. But what I learned is that accountability isn't cruelty. Distance isn't punishment. And forgiveness doesn't mean giving someone the same access they had before. Some people will do what they need to do when consequences become real. They'll follow agreements. They'll make payments. They'll fix what can be measured. But not everything that's broken can be repaired with structure. And that's okay. If you've ever been in a situation where someone close to you took advantage of your trust, I hope you remember this. Protecting yourself doesn't make you selfish. It makes you aware. You can care about someone and still choose not to let them back into the same space. You can wish them well and still keep your distance. If this story resonates with you, I'd really like to hear where you're watching from and what time it is where you are right now. And if you've ever had to set a boundary with family, share your experience. You're not alone in that. This is a fictional story created for entertainment, education, and reflection, but the emotions behind it are very real for a lot of people. If you want more stories like this, you can follow along. There's always more to talk about.